Five Nights at Freddy's is one of the most successful and most lucrative horror franchises of all time. Outside of the highly successful video games, the series has spawned merchandise, books, graphic novels, and now even an upcoming movie by the folks over at Blumhouse. Say what you will about the current state of Five Nights at Freddy's and its community, but one of the reasons that the community has thrived for as long as it has is because of fan games. Scott Cawthon, the creator of FNAF, loves the fact that his games have encouraged others to try making their own games based on FNAF, and as a result, has even gone as far as to highly encourage the community to make their own fan-made games based on the series. Scott has even gone as far as to create his own initiative project to help FNAF fan game developers get their games onto store shelves so they can make a living off of their work. As a result of Scott's attitude towards fan games, many developers have risen up and created fan games that you could genuinely argue are better than the main series. Games like The Joy of Creation Reborn Story Mode, Five Nights at Candy's Remastered, and A Shadow Over Freddy's are considered by many to be better games than the series they were birthed from. Unfortunately, just like any fan base that rockets in popularity quickly and attracts the attention of millions, you're going to hear about controversies occurring every now and again. Sometimes it's about fake game leaks. Sometimes it's about questionable decisions in regards to the franchise. Sometimes it's about people with massive egos getting themselves into needless drama. And sometimes it's about a fan game project that's so creepy, disturbing, and downright sickening that many in the community refuse to even talk about it due to the places its head developer decided to take it to. Let's just say, there's a reason we don't talk about the infamous Five Nights at Freddy's fan game, Dormitabis. Dormitabis is a Five Nights at Freddy's fan game that was developed by four main people: Blackout, OwneTrick, StevenMator, and SuperArthurBros, and acts as a direct sequel to Five Nights at Freddy's 3. The game was released at GameJolt on the 28th of February 2018 and immediately received waves of positive and negative reception. While some people loved the game for its unique gameplay and visuals, others outright despised it due to its dark subject matter and villain. In the modern day, many people refuse to touch this game with a 12-foot pole, let alone talk about it. So why? Why do people hate this game so much? In today's video, I hope to answer that question and explain in the most professional manner I possibly can why people prefer to just not talk about Dormitabis. In order to do that, I'm going to split this video into three main parts: the story, Garvey, and Blackout. First, let's talk about the story of this game. Dormitabis takes place immediately after the events of Five Nights at Freddy's 3, and follows a man named John as he wakes up in what looks to be a Hellworld version of Fazbear's Fright. Unfortunately, he can't remember who he is or why he's there in the first place. He's then called by someone named Peter, who reveals that he's dead. Apparently, John is the one that burnt down Fazbear's Fright, and now, the animatronics that wander the establishment are out to get him. According to Peter, the animatronics are actually John's childhood friends, who went missing due to weird occurrences that were continuously linked to Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. Now that John is dead, his friends are now haunting him as animatronics that are out to get him for his plasma. Apparently, in this universe, when you die, you become a ghost, and if you're caught as a ghost, your body can be torn apart in order to extract plasma, which can then be used to return to the real world. One of the kids, named Tom, tried to use some leftover plasma to resurrect all of the dead children, but failed, which resulted in them all becoming twisted versions of Fazbear animatronics. Those animatronics include Havoc Freddy, Havoc Chica, Havoc Foxy, Havoc Puppet, Golden Call, Cake Bear, the Boa, the Soul Cage, and Molten Evil. Now, John must try and survive 10 nights in a row while avoiding his friends, who have gone completely mad due to their animatronic forms. While John is attempting to survive the horrors of what is essentially his own personal hell, Peter reveals that this world isn't John's personal hell, but is rather someone else's. This person is apparently lurking in the shadows, watching the events of the game from a distance, and is waiting for the perfect time to strike. Peter reveals that whoever this person is the same person who was responsible for the disappearances of all of his friends, and left tapes laying around which reveal who he is and why he has done the things he has done. In order to find the tapes and progress to the end of the game, you must survive 10 separate nights in this dirty little office. The gameplay of Dormitabis is unique when compared to the mainline FNAF games, but in all of the wrong ways. In order to fend off the animatronics, which there are 9 of by the way, you need to do the following. Keep track of where Cake Bear is on the camera so he doesn't reach your office. Punch in case-sensitive passwords when Golden Call appears with the passwords being hidden in the cameras. Run under a desk and look at a corresponding doorway to scare off animatronics such as the Boa, Havoc Freddy, and Havoc Chica. Stare at the ceiling to scare off the Soul Cage. Play dead to avoid Molten Evil. And turn around and have a staring contest with the Havoc Puppet. And just a quick reminder in case you've already forgotten, you also need to be looking for all of those tapes I mentioned, which are both in your office and on your cameras, which can only spawn in on specific nights. If the gameplay of this game sounds like a lot, that's because it is, and it honestly becomes so disorienting to play after a while, with you having to constantly move around to avoid dying on top of focusing on the cameras, that the game just becomes a cluster. The game does try to alleviate this stress by making it so that specific animatronics are only available on specific nights, but that doesn't really help things, especially when on night 11, all the animatronics become active at once. If you don't collect all the tapes by the time you reach night 10, you get locked into the bad ending, which plays out as follows. On night 10, all the animatronics are replaced by none other than Springtrap, who is referred to in this game as Garvey. After you beat night 10, Garvey just kills John anyway, with the end screen reading, John Wright. Brat, scum, waste of air. In order to get the true ending, you need to uncover all 10 tapes and discover who Garvey truly is. After all the tapes are uncovered and you beat night 10, you gain access to the Cardboard Theater, a cardboard puppet show which shows us exactly what happened and what Garvey did. It's revealed that John burnt down Fazbear's Fright in order to kill Garvey, who is actually his brother. When Garvey was born, he had a birth defect which caused the pigmentation in his skin to make him look purple. He was often bullied for this by the other kids, with John being one of them. Their father, known as Alex Wright, was the owner of Cake Bear's Family Diner, which was the location where Garvey was often bullied. Due to how busy Alex was with running Cake Bears, he didn't have time to step in and stop the bullying. When Garvey was older, after a particular rough day of bullying, Garvey snapped and started killing all of the people that were making fun of him, which included Peter, who was also John and his brother. The bodies were never found, and over the years, Garvey continued to kill more and more innocent children across several locations, in the hopes that the murders would completely sink the reputation of Cake Bears. After the first series of murders, Alex sold Cake Bears, which was eventually rebranded as Freddy's. Even after the rebrand, Garvey kept coming back and killing children at the establishments. As the years went by, the spirits of the dead children started to haunt Garvey, so he ended up returning back to the previous locations to try and finish off the spirits. He destroyed the animatronics, which resulted in the spirits being set free, but then they cornered Garvey in the safe room of the last establishment, where he tried to hide inside of the Spring Bonnie suit. The spring locks killed him instantly, but his soul became trapped inside the suit. In the real world, when John found out about what Garvey had done, he took up a job as a security guard in Fazbear's Fright in order to finish off his brother, which involved burning down the building. After discovering this and exposing Garvey as the monster he truly is, Garvey is literally dragged down into hell, while John, Peter, and the other spirits are finally allowed to ascend to heaven. While the story doesn't sound that bad, it has a lot of problems. Almost none of the main story beats I mentioned are ever actually explained in-game in a casual playthrough. If you do a casual playthrough of the game, all you'll uncover by yourself is that your name is John, the animatronics are your friends, and that Garvey is coming to kill you. The only way to actually uncover the story is to find all the tapes, which can be a real pain in the ass considering how much the game tasks you with doing on every single night. Everything from who Garvey is to the reason everyone's stuck here is material that can only be accessed through the tapes and the Cardboard Theater. And while we're talking about Garvey, Like I mentioned earlier, this game's version of Purple Guy is Garvey, and Garvey acts as the game's central antagonist. When people often complain about this game, Garvey is one of the many reasons why. This is due to the fact that as a villain, Garvey is literally just a weaker and more edgy version of William Afton, with no additional substance added on. It also doesn't help that his voice actor tries so hard to sound tough and intimidating that it comes full circle and just ends up coming off as hilariously bad.
It's a shame. Such a shame. I didn't really want to do this. I didn't want to start doing this again. But they just won't shut up about it. It's not my fault. I can't control my physical mutations. It's not like anyone ever cared for the truth. All they ever wanted was to harm me. But this will be the end. Not without consequences. I'm going to be recording the most important parts of my plans here, as a reminder for myself.
But that's not why people hate Garvey. You see, in an attempt to try and make Garvey stand out from William Afton, Blackout, the game's only writer, attempted to add a few additional layers to Garvey in order to make him more in-depth. One of those layers is the whole purple skin thing I mentioned earlier. And as for the other thing... Oh my fucking Christ, do I really have to talk about this? Okay. Remember how I mentioned that there are collectible tapes? Well, if you listen to Tape Free, you'll quickly discover something awful about Garvey. I'll just let the tape speak for itself.
My God! This is most certainly beginning to be fun. There's this hot 15-year-old that was part of the kids' friends group. You know, it was fun. She screamed, but nobody heard her. It was so much fun.
What the fuck? If you haven't caught on, I'll just cut to the point. Not only is Garvey confirmed to be a murderer, he is also confirmed to be both a rapist and a pedophile. Why? What does this add to Garvey's character other than making him a deranged sicko? This twist is so disgusting and distasteful that when I heard it for the first time when researching this video, I actually had to step away from my computer and just take a 20-minute mental break just to comprehend what I just heard. But unfortunately, it gets even worse. Later on, it's also confirmed in a newspaper clipping that the 15-year-old that Garvey assaulted was actually found by the police. In a statement made by the police, it's confirmed that the girl was, and I'm quoting the game itself here, raped to death. So yeah, add necrophilia to the list of horrible shit that Garvey has committed. When acts of violence against children were covered in the actual FNAF series, it was always handled with respect, with decency, and above all else, maturity. In the same way that no one likes to see a dog die, no one likes to see children die. So when things like this happen in FNAF, it's often softened by it being restricted to a poorly rendered minigame or a single hidden frame. In Dormitabis, all of this is thrown right out the window when Garvey starts laughing about how he raped an innocent child, even going as far as to describe how the girl screamed for help, only to realize the room was soundproof and that no one could hear her. If you're starting to feel a little bit sick in the stomach, I don't blame you. This is so borderline tone-deaf that it's embarrassing. When compared to the original source material, Garvey is such a poor excuse for a villain, it's laughable that anybody behind this game's development genuinely thought that this kind of writing was okay, even for a second. The reason why William Afton is such a good villain is due to the fact that he murders people in order to achieve an ultimate goal, which is immortality. Unlike lots of villains, which are one note and have no substance to them, William is actually layered. He has fears, things he's actually afraid of. and is willing to do whatever he can to avoid them. He doesn't do things simply because he can. He does things because they have an actual purpose, all of which makes sense. William fears death more than anything else, so he murders people in the hopes that it'll lead him to the secret that is everlasting life. He doesn't care who it is he has to kill, be it men, women, or even children. He has a clear motive and a clear goal, which allows us to actually see things from William's perspective, regardless of if you actually agree with it or not. William is sick in the head, there's no doubt about that, but he's sick in a way that actually makes sense and is actually believable. Not just that, but his actions actually have consequences that make sense in part with the story, as his dead victims come back to haunt him, which later gets him killed. His actions have an obvious cause and effect, and he doesn't do anything that is completely unnecessary to the story. Nothing is added to William's character if he was suddenly revealed to be a rapist. As for Garvey, his character is literally just the term shock value if it were given physical form. Garvey murdered innocent kids because they bullied him, and then murdered innocent adults to make cake bears look bad, even though the establishment wasn't technically responsible for his trauma. It was the kids. He then proceeds to rape, murder, and torture anybody that so much as looks at him funny, simply because he can. His fate is the exact same as Afton's, with the children haunting him and later getting him killed. This part of Garvey's story could have been told without him needing to be a rapist or a necrophile. Having him be a murderer was already enough, so what did adding this layer onto Garvey actually add to the story of the game? Rather than writing a character that had a clear, consistent goal which fit in line with the story, Blackout for some reason opted for the lazy approach, with that being to Google horrible acts you could commit on another human being, and just making Garvey do them because it'll make him look evil. William is a good villain because he has an established motive, a goal, which is consistent and fits with his character, and he does what he does because he's afraid of death and will do anything to avoid it. His actions actually impact the story, and there's no fluff, there's no wasted storylines. He gets to the point, and that's what makes him a good character. Garvey is a bad villain because he has two poorly established and fundamentally flawed motives, and commits acts of murder and rape simply because he can. Him being a rapist has nothing to do with the story. It's just there. But, believe it or not, Garvey isn't the biggest reason why people hate this game. No. That title belongs to the game's writer, Blackout. Being the sole writer of Dormitabis, Blackout is responsible for the utter mess that is Dormitabis' story, and especially the writing of Garvey. Unfortunately, Garvey's writing wasn't due to Blackout's inexperience as a writer. It was instead due to the fact that Garvey's personality, behavior, and how he acts in-game is based on Blackout himself. Yes, I'm dead fucking serious. Garvey is a self-insert for Blackout. On the 12th of November 2020, Blackout would be exposed through a series of screenshots, all of which revealed various things that Blackout had done. Through these screenshots, we can confirm that he was outed as a rapist, a necrophiliac, a control freak, an abuser, a nymphomaniac, and even a transphobe. If that wasn't bad enough, Blackout would also be exposed as a pedophile for interacting with a 12-year-old on Discord. Aside from simply chatting with the minor, Blackout constantly tried to encourage the minor into being his special friend, and constantly joked about how low the age of consent is in his home country of Germany. He would also send a nude image to the minor, which was of his rear end. This image would later be shared to several of Blackout's friends, who cut contact with him immediately. And no, despite being in possession of the screenshot, I'm gonna spare you all the misery of having to actually look at it. Due to the severe heat on his back, Blackout would leave the Five Nights at Freddy's community behind altogether, but not before leaving behind a message on his GameJolt profile, which simply reads, Jesus Christ, just leave me be. I don't want to live in your heads rent-free. I've moved on, and you should as well. Bye. And since then, nobody has heard from Blackout, with him deleting most of his accounts, including his Discord account, in a desperate bid to cover his tracks. It is absolutely disgusting to think that while OwneTrick, StevenMator, and SuperArthurBros were simply trying to make a fun FNAF horror game, Blackout took advantage of this to insert himself into the game in order to fulfill his sick and twisted fantasies behind his friend's back. Now that we've covered everything there is to cover in regards to this game, I think it's safe to conclude that the reason that nobody wishes to talk about Dormitabis is due to the subject matter, which was inspired by the twisted fantasies and fetishes of the game's writer. Because of this, Dormitabis' reputation has forever been relegated to the wastebin of history, being left to rot forever. But believe it or not, this story actually has a somewhat happy ending. After Blackout fled the internet in order to avoid the backlash of his grievous misdeeds, a FNAF fangame developer by the name of Expelled Studios took it upon themselves to completely remaster Dormitabis from the ground up, removing any and all instances of Garvey being a degenerate, and instead rewrote the story of the game to be much more in line with how someone like Scott Cawthon would actually go about writing this game. Thanks to the help of all of these lovely and wonderful people on screen, Dormitabis Remastered was released to GameJolt on July 31st of this year to an overwhelmingly positive reception. The game includes all the content from the original, alongside new characters, reworked mechanics to make the game more fun and balanced, and even some new hidden endings to uncover. If you're interested in trying Dormitabis but don't wish to support the original, this Blackout-free remaster is perfect. This is Hazy Gray, and thanks for watching this video.